The series begins with Dr. Lee, who is known for treating his patients by getting close to them and finding the root of the problem, sometimes even delving into their family issues to see if they cause this fatigue and burden before resorting to medication. And this time, his patient is a bit strange, entering the hospital on crutches and unable to walk due to pain, after having been the best soccer player in all of Korea and neighboring countries. But that was not the problem at all, because he actually had nothing wrong with him. His only problem was suffering from hypochondria due to excessive stress. As soon as he saw Dr. Lee, he told him he was not needed because the issue had escalated and it seemed he needed an orthopedic surgeon, adding that due to the pain he wanted to end his life or lose his leg and hoped they would find a good doctor to end this quickly, at which point Lee decided to treat him with shock therapy since he had tried every treatment with no results. And he assured him that having studied for 7 years meant he could do whatever he wanted, and he ordered his assistants to tie his hands and feet to perform the operation immediately, causing the patient to get nervous and back down, asking them to let him go because they surely could not do this in the emergency room. But the doctor assured him there was no escape because everything was calculated. He ordered the assistants to take him to the operating room, and halfway there, he started trying to untie himself in any way. Then he took off and ran out of the hospital quickly, and suddenly his legs were perfectly fine. Then he found Lee in front of him, who took him to his office to explain his condition, and that all that was happening was just hallucinations because he was constantly afraid of making a mistake while playing. So the issue turned into pathological anxiety. So he encouraged him to return to training and reminded him of all the matches he played in the past that made him famous. Meanwhile, we saw G in a session with Gina, her psychiatrist, and she appeared very angry, looking like she was carrying the weight of the world on her shoulders. And we learned she worked as a musical theater actress, performing in musicals, but she had caused problems with everyone around her, even her colleagues, because she was the type who could not control her temper at all, being in peak happiness when suddenly her mood would flip 180 degrees and she would be blind with rage. Moreover, she would get angry at things that did not concern her, such as finding a mother leaving her crying son in the street, so she lectured her on motherhood and called her a cruel woman, at which point the doctor tried to delve into the details too, understand exactly what her childhood was like, as it was clear she lacked affection growing up. Incidentally, she was diagnosed with borderline personality disorder, which is hard to treat, but not impossible, so G got very tense as soon as the doctor asked about her childhood, standing up quickly to gather her things and leave without warning, as it was clear the doctor had hit a nerve. And at the end of the day, we found Lee walking the streets with Officer Dong for his shift, though he was not really an officer but a patient who wanted to be one. And when that dream failed, the shock made his brain believe he was a real officer, so he acted accordingly. And because of that, our doctor tried to please him to get closer and establish a good relationship to treat him. But unfortunately, the situation backfired on both of them because they coincidentally found a thief stealing a woman's bag, so they chased him until they caught him. But the matter escalated and reached the hospital, which was completely unacceptable because a patient like him should not be on the street while living in delusions, as it could affect him severely. So the deputy director held a meeting to understand exactly what happened, or rather to scold him and give him a hard time, not because he was a manager, but because he was a malicious man who was jealous of all the doctors smarter than him. Dr. Wong, the head of the psychiatric department, was present and tried to calm things down so the issue would not blow out of proportion, as the deputy was determined to escalate the matter and form a disciplinary committee, which was honestly an overreaction. But in the end, they informed him that his patient would be transferred to someone else since he could not handle him. So he asked them to give him one last chance, saying if any more disasters happened, they could transfer him however they wanted. Later, a female patient came to them in a very difficult condition because she imagined bugs were coming out of her skin. She kept scratching like that until she harmed herself, and moreover, she was genuinely convinced that this was actually happening, and she insisted she was not crazy, so they would not transfer her to the psychiatric ward. At that point, Dr. Xian became responsible for her case and held a meeting with the present doctors to find a way to treat her, and it was clear that Lee's opinion did not sit well with him, and we learned then that they were very close friends, but each led a team and had his own method of treat. Meanwhile, G was at the academy where she worked and found her manager scolding 2 rookies and tearing into them because they asked for a raise, telling them he did not need their services anyway. So she got very annoyed and felt she had to intervene, telling him to calm down a bit because he could not let them go that easily, as he would not find others like them again. So he gave her a piece of his mind too, saying just because she became a lead singer did not mean she should think she was safe, so she was forced to stay silent to avoid losing her job. And afterward, she took them to her best friend Suna's restaurant to feed them and do anything to lighten the mood a bit, bit. But it was clear her friend was displeased, as G was constantly spending her money on these rookie kids. At that time, the patient Dong was on a hunger strike because they detained him in the hospital due to the problem he caused, so Lee took him to the roof to talk to him, hoping to untangle the knot a bit, and he started telling him why he could not become an officer, which was because he was studying and working at the same time to support his grandmother, and time just passed until his grandmother died without him achieving his dream either. So the matter ended in trauma for him. At the end of the day, G was very happy because her name was on the awards list, which was almost the biggest thing she dreamed of, to walk the red carpet and receive an award. And at that time, she was talking to her boyfriend Hun, who works as a journalist, and he told her that hopefully he would be there with her at the party because he would be working. And the next day, as soon as Lee arrived at the hospital, he got news that Dong had escaped, which was naturally a disaster because he would surely put on the officer's uniform and inhabit the persona. And amazingly, of all places, he was at the award ceremony posing as security or something. And surely, because of the clothes he was wearing, no one suspected him. And coincidentally, as soon as G arrived at the party and parked her car, she found Dong in front of her, insisting she was parked in the wrong spot. So she tried to explain to him that she was late and had to enter quickly to catch the party, but he remained insistent that she move her car from its place. And suddenly he started suspecting she had been drinking and was not sober. So he took out a breathalyzer test from his pocket to verify for himself, and indeed he found a percentage of alcohol in her body and insisted on taking her with him to the police station. So she tried to confuse him with words and escaped from him quickly and ran into the party because it was not the time for this at all. Meanwhile, Lee figured out Dong's location and took his car and raced to the party to catch him before things got messier. And afterwards, they announced that G won the award for Best Musical Actress. So she went up on stage with great pride to accept the award. But unfortunately, this beautiful moment turned into the worst moment of her life because she found Dong walking towards her in the middle of the stage, handcuffing her and declaring in front of everyone that she was driving while not in her natural state. Then he took her and they left the party complete. And at that moment, Lee arrived and tried to contain the situation as much as he could, but the mess was already made because the photographers gathered and photographed everything happening. And suddenly the incident became a trend and everyone turned against our protected girl. And as soon as they arrived at the police station, she learned everything and understood he was not actually an officer. So she began entering one of her fits of rage and demanded they test her all over again to prove her innocence. And indeed, she turned out perfectly fine, as the device was simply broken because he had not used it for years. And at that time, when she opened her mobile to check the news, she found that Hyun, who was supposed to be her only army, did not hesitate to seize the moment and posted the news himself without even defending her. So she turned around and went to his workplace. And then she received the biggest shock because she discovered he was actually in a relationship with another woman. So this time her fit of rage was much bigger, and she grabbed the first stick she found and smashed his car glass to release the anger inside her. So they took her to the police station again, but this time as an accused suspect, though the matter was settled by paying compensation, and that was it. As soon as she left the police station, she found Dr. Lee waiting for her to ask her to drop the charges and leave Dong alone because in the end he was a patient and was not in his right mind. But of course, Ji would not listen to him and unleashed all her energy on him, and she was moments away from completely losing her mind. Anyway, with all respect, he apologized to her and left. And the next day, when he went to the hospital, he heard from the department head that they would transfer Dong to another doctor as agreed. So he got very annoyed and ran to the director's office and kept begging her, asking her to at least leave him responsible for him until he got out of prison. Then he would figure it out. Meanwhile, when Ji went to the academy to practice, she found the manager in front of her, and he informed her she was fired. So there was no point in tiring herself and coming for nothing. And no matter how much she tried to explain to him that she was innocent and hadn't been drinking or anything, and all that happened was a misunderstanding with a sick person, he pretended not to hear, and with complete rudeness, he made her understand that all her friends who worked with her were afraid of her and her manner. So she was forced to control herself this time, because if she got angry this time, they would call her crazy as usual. So she gathered her things and left and sat, drinking all day in the hope that this would heal her wounds. And at the end of the day, she felt she could not hold herself back any longer. So she went to the hospital to fight with Dong, but she found Dr. Lee, informing her that he was still detained because of the case, and he noticed a wound on her hand and insisted that he must sterilize it for her because he couldn't let her leave like that. And just as he was about to start talking to her, hoping she had calmed down a bit, she fell asleep right there from the effect of the stuff she had been drinking all morning. So he felt sorry for her and let her sleep comfortably. And afterward, he went to meet his friend Gina, who had brought him specifically specifically to let him know she wanted to transfer a case of hers to him because she could no longer help her. And she explained to him that her only problem was that she didn't know how to control her anger. And of course, she meant G. What a strange coincidence. Anyway, the important thing is that the next day, as soon as our girl woke up, she discovered she had slept in the emergency room. So she tried to get up secretly without anyone noticing her because the situation was honestly a bit embarrassing. But she found Lee in front of her, and he took her to his office to treat the wound. So she let him know that if he was doing all this, so she would drop the case. She did not intend to do anything like that because she spent 10 years striving to win the award, and suddenly she lost everything because of him. Not to mention her boyfriend turned out to be cheating on her. So the world was honestly coming at her from everywhere. And for the second time, he respected her decision and gave her an empty bag. So if she wanted to let out the words inside her, she could speak into it freely and then throw it in the trash normally. So she felt touched. And on her way home, she texted him that she had forgiven him. As for the patient who was hallucinating about insects, finally, thank God, she started talking. And we learned then that the problem started when her boyfriend broke up with her and told her she was an insect. So her mind did not process the word. And after that, what happened happened. And thank God, finally the psychiatric treatment phase began. And afterward, every time G went to an interview for a new troupe, they made her understand she would not be accepted because of the rumors spreading about her. And while she was sitting depressed, she found Lee calling her and asking her for a small favor to help a patient. And at that moment, he went to Dong and took him to the roof to change the atmosphere together. And as soon as they went up, they found G standing on the edge of the building. So the first thing that came to his mind was that she definitely had some not so pleasant thoughts in her head. And then he tried to calm her down and asked her to come down quickly. So she started acting out the persona and said that everything was gone and her future was destroyed because of him. But it wouldn't matter anyway because he wasn't even an officer. And she wished for him that the day would come when he would be treated and become a real officer. And it seemed they were trying to treat him with shock therapy. The important thing is that it actually yielded results because he was very affected and started crying and apologized to her for what happened and said at the top of his voice that he was not an officer or anything and would not give up until he was treated. And at that time, Lee offered that they go have dinner together tomorrow as a token of gratitude. So she was very happy and went the next day in peak excitement. But she found Dr. Xian there, and he was intentionally treating her like a patient to provoke her. So she got very annoyed and took off and left. And at that time, Lee was watching her from afar to try to diagnose her condition and see how far her anger reached. And he suspected she had borderline personality disorder. But he told himself it was impossible for his friend to give him a patient with this disorder. It seemed that he likely had trauma as well. And at that time, G went to her friend's restaurant, since she practically had no one else in the world. And they went to the sea to change the mood a bit. And afterward, Dong was cleared of the charges and refused to be transferred to another hospital or even stay in the first one, deciding to work on himself and try his luck again. So maybe this time it would work out and he would become a real officer. At which point, Lee called G asking to meet, and he took her with him to watch a match for the patient who had the leg problem, reminding everyone of the player from the beginning, but playing like the Korean Mo Salah. And after feeling that her mood had improved, he took her home and offered to treat her, but she politely refused the matter and let him know she was not sick or anything. And he understood then that she needed some effort to admit she actually had a problem. Later, when he went to the hospital, they had 3 new cases, each more difficult than the last. The first was about 15 years old and constantly heard a strange voice in his ear, in addition to seeing a small child in front of him, while the second entered the hospital because he ate paper. And the last one refused to take medication despite having a serious illness, just to annoy her mother and make her regret what she did to her. At that time, Dr. Lee was responsible for the patient who ate paper. And when he sat with him and started looking into the old records, he understood he had anxiety, all due to his excessive fear of his father. And at the end of the day, G was working with her friend at her restaurant to distract herself with anything. So she found Lee entering with his team to have dinner together. And we learned here that one of his team members, Gong, was the restaurant owner's sister. And in the middle of the nice gathering while they were eating normally, 2 young men arrived. And when our girl informed them they were closed because there was no food, they started annoying her because she was famous due to that scandal. So she lost her temper and got into a fight with them. But thankfully, Lee saved the situation before it escalated. And afterward, he waited for her in front of the restaurant to talk to her and help her relax a bit, offering for her to work with them at the hospital and help with drama therapy sessions like she did with Dong, asking her to think about it freely and not rush the decision. And as soon as he returned home, he received a call from the hospital that his father had escaped. So he ran to see exactly what was happening. And on his way to the hospital, he found him running beside the car, not even wearing anything on his feet in the freezing cold. So he got out quickly and caught him, and we learned then that his father was a very big surgeon, and their relationship was not the best, especially after he separated from his mother. Plus, when he got older, he developed dementia and was hospitalized all the time. And as time passed, his condition deteriorated to the point that sometimes he could not recognize his son. Later, when he returned to work, he learned that the paper patient canceled his appointment and did not intend to come. So he went to him at his workplace to know exactly what his problem was. And he sat with him for a heart-to-heart and explained he was ready to help because he could not spend his life afraid of his father like this. So he was touched by the words and agreed to continue treatment. And then G went to the hospital to meet Lee and informed him she agreed to the work idea because she wanted to try something new, and she started watching videos to learn more. And her first session was with the patient who ate paper, acting as his father and saying the exact same things his father said until the boy reached his limit and finally let out everything inside him. And afterward, when they tried the method with the case acting stubbornly against her mother, she was very provocative to the point that she angered G and made her lose her temper and enter a fit of rage. And when she realized the disaster she caused, she went to apologize to Dr. Lee, feeling then that this was the right time to visit her adoptive mother, who always treated her poorly. Incidentally, she adopted her from the orphanage when she was 6 years old and returned her 3 years later because she set fire to the house. So almost from that moment, she could not get over it and kept visiting her, despite the rejection she always received. And when she found her kicking her out politely, she realized this was the right time to start treatment. So she went to wait for Lee in front of his house. And as soon as he arrived, she asked him to treat her. So he let her know that he agreed completely and invited her in to make her something to eat. At which point, he noticed the scar on her hand. So he understood the situation immediately and started asking her why she did that. So she explained to him that she just wanted those around her to focus on her a bit, and her mind led her to this not-so-good method. And as soon as she returned home, she was at the peak of happiness because she was on the first step of treatment. But suddenly her entire state flipped upside down as soon as she turned on the TV and found her ex in front of her. And not only that, he was also wearing the watch she had given him as a gift. So she got very annoyed and a fit of rage began. And she called him and kept scolding him and was just about to get dressed to go to him and finish him off there. But at the last moment, she realized the shift that happened in her mood and tried to control herself a bit. And the next day, she went to the hospital to meet Lee and tell him what happened. So he explained to her that anyone in her place would be annoyed in exactly the same way and asked her to come meet him immediately once she got the watch so they could get rid of it together. Afterward, they found the Human Rights Committee coming specifically for them because someone reported Dr. Lee for detaining a patient in the hospital without his family's consent, referring to the 15-year-old patient who heard voices in his ear. And we learned then that Lee had a YouTube channel where he made videos to help with mental health and such. And once he received a message from someone saying he heard strange voices and felt the world was coming at him too hard, so enough was enough, and he had written his exact location. So Lee went to him personally to save him before he did anything to harm himself, and detained him in the hospital without his mother's consent because she was traveling abroad, and left him living like a mouse alone in a very tiny room. So it was almost the loneliness combined with the suffocation that drove him to this stage. At the end of the day, he went to have dinner with Xian and Gina to light the disasters he kept falling into every now and then. And at that time, he informed them that he suspected G had borderline personality disorder, and that surely his suspicion was wrong because they would never do this to him as Lee had. A problem with this subject because a few years ago, he was treating a case with the same illness, and in the end, she died. As for G, as soon as she got the watch, she went to him immediately, just as he asked. And indeed, they went together to throw it in the nearest garbage dump. So she felt very happy and released some of the energy inside her and tried to help him relax a bit since the world was turning its back on him. And when he returned to the hospital, they informed him that they withdrew all patients from him until this case issue was resolved and things calmed down a bit. So he got very annoyed, and as he was leaving the hospital, G was passing by him, but because he was so unfocused, he didn't notice her. Did our heroine stay quiet? Of course not. She took it completely personally and went to pick a fight with him, asking why he ignored her as she did nothing to be treated this way, blowing the issue out of proportion excessively. Honestly, we women are almost all like this. She is not the only one. Anyway, he apologized to her and explained that he just had some problems making him unfocused. Then he left and let her be, and afterward, he was in his car leaving the hospital, and suddenly he found her standing in front of him without any preamble. So he took the shock and started piecing the events together and confirmed she was indeed a borderline personality. So he went to his friend Gina to understand how she could do this to him since she knew his condition best and he made her understand he could not be responsible for this case, and took off and left. And we learned then that the case that caused him this trauma was not just a patient of his. On the contrary, they were in a relationship, and one day they were out together on a boat, and the atmosphere was perfect. But suddenly, she felt he was distracted from her. So she wanted to make him focus on her, and did what she did. And naturally, until now, he could not get over it, and surely would not repeat the whole scenario from the start. Meanwhile, G was sitting with her friend in the restaurant, thinking of a solution to find out who reported him, and suddenly they found a woman standing and looking at them from outside. And when our girl focused on her a bit, she realized this was a patient at the hospital who seemed newly discharged and suffered from alcohol addiction. So she did what she wanted and sat drinking with her because she tricked her into thinking she knew who reported the doctor, basically blackmailing her until the woman got very tired and lost consciousness from excessive drinking. So they rushed her to the hospital. And at that time, as soon as Lee knew what happened, he went quickly to check on her and see how far the situation had gone. And afterward, G kept calling him because she knew he was definitely ignoring her. And when she found him ignoring her, she decided to herself to treat him the same way. But as soon as she saw him calling her, she went back on her word immediately and could not believe it. And at that time, he spoke to her in the most formal way in the world and blamed her for what she did until she got angry at him and told him she would not let him see her face again. Even the work at the hospital would stop. So he felt grateful that she ended it herself, and he got up and left her. And the next day, he went to the police station to see what happened with the case against him. And thankfully, the matter passed peacefully. But one problem remained. He needed to know who reported him, and he discovered it was his father. And at that time, G went to her doctor because she was fed up with the way he treated her, and she kept talking to her until she finally concluded she was not annoyed with him or anything. On the contrary, she just wanted to return some of the help he had offered her, but it was clear he had shut her out completely. Afterward, while Lee was in the hospital, he received a call that his father had escaped. And not only that, he left all places and went to the hospital where his son worked, wore a doctor's uniform, and entered the operating room pretending he had a surgery. So Lee felt he had reached his limit with what was happening and went to get him himself, fighting with him because he could not comprehend how his father had the nerve so besides to report him for something like that. And essentially, his father did all this because he refused to let Lee continue in the psychiatric department as he wanted him to be a surgeon like him. So almost the little time he was lucid, he would just pester his son, and that was it. And in the middle of the fight, G was passing by and watching everything happening. So she felt very sorry for him and realized that while he was a doctor, he surely had his own problems too. So she took him by the hand and led him to the drama therapy room and performed a singing segment for him to relieve some of the pressure he was under. And after this situation, he started to calm down towards her a bit. And she herself started feeling that. She had feelings for him to the point that she talked to her doctor to explain the situation exactly. And of course, as soon as Gina heard these words, she got very tense because, amazingly, the scenario was playing out just like the first time. And besides that, she was jealous because she actually loved him, but in secret. So she went to have dinner with Xian to tell him what happened and help her decide what exactly to do about this disaster. Meanwhile, Kang, who was one of Dr. Xian's team members, was walking peacefully in the metro and suddenly found a guy taking pictures of a girl without her noticing. So she shouted loudly until the whole metro gathered around him. And as soon as she saw his face, she was shocked to learn he was a very famous surgeon at their hospital. And the issue escalated, and they found out they had created a specific website among doctors for things like this. And naturally, this became a scandal in the hospital, especially since more than 22 doctors working with them were present on the site and were distinguished members too. At that time, the department head decided that instead of firing them, he would offer them psychiatric therapy to be treated. And indeed, he started distributing them among all the present doctors. So Kang was very happy that this was her first case to handle alone. And as soon as she went to sit with him to broach the subject, it was clear he kept giving her strange looks as if he recognized her. Meanwhile, they tried to conduct group therapy for them in the hope that they would be convinced they had a big problem that needed treatment. But of course, they all wanted to escape in any way because the topic was very embarrassing. And afterward, Kang tried again with her case, but this time he felt guilty while sitting in front of her to the point that he got up and left her. And we learned then that someone had photographed Kang and posted her photos on the site, which was why his guilt made him unable to sit in front of her. And as soon as Dr. Xian reached the bottom of this, he tried to inform Kang in the calmest way possible so the issue wouldn't turn into trauma for her. But she couldn't stand what was done to her and went to fight with her patient while he was in the middle of a meeting with doctors, causing a big scene because she thought he was the one who photographed her. Meanwhile, when Lee sat with the doctor responsible for his case, he sensed he was excessively excessively afraid, so he started dragging the words out of him and discovered that he was the one who photographed Kang. So he realized the issue had reached a very difficult stage with him, and then an idea came to his mind, and he went to G at the restaurant and offered for her to return to work in drama therapy, again, clearly making excuses to back down. And her first session was with his case, where she started acting as his sister, coming to complain to him that someone photographed her while walking in the street, and she kept crying until she made him reach his limit and admit his mistake, deciding to take responsibility for what he did. At the end of the day, Lee took our girl home and thanked her for what she did and gave her a bracelet to wear on her wrist to hide the scar trace. So she was very happy, as if he had confessed his love to her, for instance, and he realized she had feelings for him and tried to meet Gina to talk to her about this subject and ask her what exactly to do. So she explained to him that this was a natural situation for her because she had an emptiness inside her, but if he could just set boundaries between them, everything would be fine. And the next day, as soon as he arrived at the hospital, he learned a new case was coming to him, a very important man, because he was a member of parliament, and suddenly he started getting spasms in his head due to psychological stress, and he wanted to treat this issue as soon as possible because he had an important meeting in a few days and could not possibly appear like that in front of people. Meanwhile, G was getting herself ready, bringing a cake and a gift, and going to celebrate her adoptive mother's birthday. So her friend tried to advise her that what she was doing was not logical at all, because every time she treated her very badly and kicked her out. But she remained insistent on her opinion, and as soon as she arrived at the place where she worked, she learned her mother had actually left it and moved to another place without telling her, almost doing all this to get rid of her. So she started getting tense and was about to enter her fit of rage, but tried to talk to Lee first, hoping he would say anything to calm her down. And at that time, all that was on his mind was that he wanted to limit the relationship. So he hung up on her quickly without understanding anything from her. And afterward, he and Gina went to have dinner at her friend's restaurant. And in the middle of their conversation, her friend eavesdropped on them and understood that Lee treated her friend as just a case of his, and that Gina was the one who asked him to do that. And at that time, G could not stand the situation and called someone specifically to find out her mother's exact location. And as soon as she knew the place, she traveled to her and found her working in a market. And when this woman saw her, she felt she would never get rid of this disaster and started saying very harsh words to her until she lost her temper and entered a fit of rage, starting to throw and bang things around her. Meanwhile, Lee was trying to call her to know exactly where she was. And when he found she had disappeared, he started searching for her. And the first place that came to his mind was the sea, because she had told him the only memory she recalled about her real mother was that she took her to the sea before taking her to the shelter. And as soon as he arrived, he actually found her there and spent the whole time with her to comfort her about what happened. And at the end of the day, when they were about to return, he discovered that his car key was lost. So they sat searching for it in the sand like that. But suddenly he found she had disappeared from around him. So he started getting very tense and remembered she acted like the girl he used to love. But he found her coming with the key in her hand, explaining she just went a bit far because she was searching diligently, and she was very happy because it was the first time she felt someone worried about her in this way. And when she returned home, she found her friend waiting for her. So she told her what happened while flying with Joy, and her friend gave her the shock to her face and made her understand that he treated her as a patient and that Gina was the one who requested her transfer to him. So she got very annoyed and felt betrayed and went to Gina at the clinic to understand from her how she could abandon her. In this way, telling her she would not come to her again. Then she took off and went to Lee at the hospital. And as soon as she met him, she pulled him by his hand to go sit in the drama therapy room. And at that moment, the hospital deputy was standing and watching the scene, as he never missed a chance to catch anything on Lee to frame him for any disaster. And at that time, G could not talk to him about anything because she did not want to get an answer she wouldn't like. Meanwhile, Dr. Xian was visiting Kang because since the incident happened, she had locked herself at home and couldn't go out to the street as she felt everyone was constantly staring at her. So he explained to her that he came to check on her and gave her Gina's number to follow up with her because she had to be treated. So G went to the hospital because she had a session with Lee. But as soon as she arrived, it was clear he wasn't free, or he passed by her quickly as if he didn't see her at all. So she was very affected to the point that she stayed sitting waiting for him until he returned. And she found the hospital deputy coming to her specifically to understand from her the nature of the relationship between them. Exactly, getting 2 words out of her and then going to create a story that a respectable doctor was involved involved with his patient. But the department head knew Lee very well and realized he would never do that. And at the end of the day, when our boy returned to the hospital, he found her still waiting for him and apologized to her because there was an emergency that forced him to leave. And the next day, Wang took Lee to the roof to talk to him and asked him to give up her case because her presence in his life would cause him many problems. So he explained to him that this talk was nonsense and that he knew how to handle the matter well, besides feeling that her presence helped him overcome his own problem. And at that time, Ji was cooking for him herself and making him a lunchbox like no other, and choosing the best outfit on the rack so when she went to the session, she would be at the peak of her elegance. But as soon as she arrived at his office, she heard him talking to his manager, explaining that there was absolutely nothing between them, and that for him, she was just a case he was treating. So she was very affected and went to her friend's restaurant and sat crying and complaining because she felt he was no different from everyone who left her before. And at the end of the day, he went to his father at the hospital to visit him, and when he found him in his condition, remembering nothing, he kept talking to him and telling him everything bothering him. And at that moment, his father gave him vague advice and made him understand he must face things and could not run away all his life. So he finished with him and went straight to Ji. And as soon as she saw him, she was very angry because she felt betrayed and unleashed all her energy on him. So he waited for her to calm down and afterwards took her to sit in a quiet place to talk comfortably. And he tried to hint that what was between them was greater than her being just a patient of his. And because our girl is a bit frank, she told him it looked like he liked her. And if he intended to lead her on and then disappear like the one before, he should withdraw now. At which point, he got very nervous because she confronted him with the truth. So he told her, listen, I have late work and I must go now. And when he arrived at the hospital, a new case came to them. But this time, Xian was responsible for it. A man working in the fire department who, due to the last accident he was in, started getting hallucinations and constantly imagining there was smoke in front of him and that the issue was growing around him to the point that he woke up the whole hospital in the middle of the night to get them out of the rooms before something happened to them, entering a state of panic. And if Lee hadn't been in the hospital and caught him, trying to calm him down. Meanwhile, Ji had a session with Lee and appeared calmer, and she wasn't even annoyed with her doctor anymore. She just felt a bit betrayed. And after she finished and was leaving, she met the deputy by chance and deduced that he surely started the rumor after he spoke with her. So she went to fight with him and warned him that if he spoke about the subject again, she would file a defamation suit against him. Afterwards, Xian called her to request that she help his patient with the drama therapy dialogue and write a script for him that was suitable for his condition. So she got very excited and agreed. And at that time, Lee went to have breakfast with Gina because he wanted to talk to her about updates. So she asked him if he had feelings toward Ji, and when he didn't deny her question, she got very annoyed and made him understand she liked him, but that was it. She intended to give up so they could continue as friends normally. And at that time, Lee noticed that the assistant doctor in his team appeared depressed because he was following up with a case, and unfortunately the patient passed away. So he remembered to himself that when he went through this experience, all he needed was someone to understand him and comfort him. But that didn't happen, as his father was constantly pressuring him more and blaming him. So he decided to give what he lacked, and intensely so, taking the assistant at the crack of dawn to train together and telling him that what happened was not his fault, so he shouldn't blame himself that way. And afterward, Ji was sitting with her friend, showing her the script she wrote, and it appeared she was very happy. But this happiness did not last, because suddenly she got a call from the hospital that she was rejected. And naturally, in situations like this, she started entering a fit of rage and wanted to smash the world on their heads. But her friend tried to calm her down and made her understand that Lee shouldn't see her in this state at all because he had no fault in anything happening. So she took off and went to the hospital to beg the deputy to take her back because she thought he was the reason for this decision. And while she was kneeling to beg him, she found Lee entering the office and informing the deputy that they were in a relationship and he could do what he wanted. And he pulled her by her hand and left. And as soon as they got out of the office, he started realizing the disaster he caused. And she almost couldn't believe it honestly and latched onto the word and acted like they were already in a relationship. At that time, Gong, her friend's sister, saw them standing together. And when she understood there was something between them, she got very annoyed because she knew a relationship like this would bring tons of trouble. And afterward, Gina was in her car and coincidentally found Ji waving at her from afar, so she pretended not to notice her. But our girl smiled and was characterized by persistence, so she went to open the car door and got in beside her, explaining she just wanted a quick word with her. And at that time, Gina told her she would not deal with her as a doctor. On the contrary, she would treat her like a friend, and started scolding her and making her her understand that if she intended to enter a relationship, she must trust the person with her and at the same time remain confident in herself for the relationship to succeed and be healthy. Our girl did feel a bit wronged by these words, but she realized they contained the essence of truth. The next day, she was going to the hospital because she had a session with Lee. So she met Xian face to face, and he asked her for 5 minutes because he needed her for something. So she couldn't say no to him, and naturally, she was very late for her appointment. And as soon as she entered Lee's office, she found him with a long face, and he told her that since she had an appointment, she shouldn't delay it just because. She couldn't say no, and basically told her to leave without responding because her session time was over. So she left his office unable to stand herself and went to her friend, hoping she would comfort her about the matter. But her friend told her she was wrong because she could have talked to Xian normally after finishing her appointment. At the end of the day, she tried calling him many times, but he didn't answer her. So her mind started picturing that he would leave her and didn't love her like before. And we girls are all like that, even though he was just swamped with work. Nothing more. Not like Muhammad Ramadan working himself to death. No, not at all. When he returned to his office and picked up his mobile, he found she had called him more than 50 times. And not only that, she had also sent him a picture of her hand to make him understand that not so good thoughts were entering her mind regarding herself. So he got very tense and called her back. And when she didn't answer, he ran to the car to go to her quickly before anything happened to her. And at that time, he called Gina, who tried to calm him down and explained that if he went to her, he would be harming her more because she needed to realize that what she was doing was not a solution. So he tried to restrain himself and returned home, sending her a message that he was with her in everything and would never leave her. Afterward, they held a drama therapy session for the patient working in the fire department, bringing him the teacher he loved most when he was in school because she always compensated for the mother who left him when he was young, and as soon as he saw her, he let out everything inside him and sat, crying. At the end of the day, G went to the hospital to finish her resignation papers. And when she finished, she went to Lee's office and informed him they couldn't continue together because when she thought about it, she felt she didn't love him, and she walked away without him even replying. And when he went after her, he found her still standing behind the door normally, and she explained she was just giving him a simple test to see his reaction. And thankfully, they remained together as usual. Then news spread in the hospital that a nurse had passed away, but it was clear she did this to herself because she was being bullied by older nurses and almost couldn't handle what happened. And naturally, the issue escalated, and the police came to investigate. But what was unexpected was that the officer's assistant was Dong, who finally, thank God, was treated and was actually able to achieve his dream of becoming an officer. And as soon as Lee saw him, he couldn't comprehend what was happening, to the point he thought he was still hallucinating. And then Dong informed him that the nurse was suffering from depression and that Gina was responsible for her case. But there was a very small problem, because before she died, she wrote a farewell letter mentioning her doctor's name. So when her family found out, they decided to file a lawsuit against her because she didn't know how to treat her correctly. At that time, the hospital director wanted to pin the issue on the nurses in any way, even though the problem was fundamentally due to the work pressure they put on them because they didn't want to increase staff. And of course, Wang completely refused this matter because what was happening was unjust. But surely the director's word was the one that would go in the end, and they started gathering the nurses to know exactly who was bullying her. Meanwhile, Lee went to his friend to comfort her about what was happening, and he found the nurse's mother there crying and blaming her for being the cause of what happened to her daughter. So he tried to calm things down to understand exactly what happened, and then Gina told him about her condition and that she was being bullied by her older colleagues. And as soon as Gina knew that, she got very heated and told her that this shouldn't happen and she must take a stand. But unfortunately, when she tried to take a stand with them, the matter backfired on her because they bullied her even more. So naturally, she started blaming the doctor for this and stopped going to her altogether. And after that, what happened happened. At that time, he went to meet the nurse himself to understand exactly what happened from her, because he knew the hospital intended to make them take the fall without solving the root of the problem. And at that time, he received a call from the police station that G had raised a sharp object against one of the officers. So he ran to understand exactly what was happening and tried to calm her down, taking her aside to talk together. So she told him she had come to defend Dr. Gina and assure them she was a good doctor. But as soon as the officer knew she was a patient, he started treating her as such that she was crazy and kept provoking her with words, saying they basically didn't take talk from a mentally ill patient. So naturally, she couldn't take it, and a fit of rage came immediately. So Lee tried to distract her with something else and let her know that if she went to Gina and told her she tried to help her, she would be very happy. So she took the first taxi she found to go to her. And at that time, Lee returned to the officer to make him understand that he shouldn't have treated her that way, and that even if she was a patient, that didn't give him the right to speak to her like that, until he made him thoroughly ashamed of himself, looking like an old sock. Meanwhile, Lee spoke with the head nurse to unite together and submit an objection to the work system because they had to increase the number of nurses since what was happening to them was very unfair. And when G went to the doctor and told her the couple of words she had, it was clear she was very happy and how much she needed to hear that, because the accident made her start doubting her ability as a doctor. And as soon as she finished with her, she went to a friend's academy because he offered her to work with him, giving theater, acting lessons to young people. And of course, she was excited because finally she would return to doing the things she loved. And afterward, she went to the hospital to meet Lee, but she found the department head asking her for 5 minutes to talk. So she let him know they couldn't stay longer than that because she had a very urgent appointment and it wouldn't be right to be late for it, clearly showing the treatment worked perfect. At that time, he offered to be responsible for her case because she couldn't remain involved with her doctor. So she asked him to give her time to think and she would reply to him later. When she went to Lee's office, he received a call from his father's hospital to go to him. So she offered to go with him, and as soon as his father saw her, he thought she was his wife and told her how much he missed her and how life after they separated was very bad for him, to the point that he couldn't deal with his son because he always reminded him of her. So Lee was very moved and started to understand why he treated him that way. And on their way home, the nurse called him and informed him that everyone in the hospital was spreading rumors that she was the reason for what happened and that she could no longer take it and would do exactly like her friend did. Then she hung up on him, so he called Dong to inform him at the police station, and at the same time, they helped him go live and broadcast on the microphones present at the river, so if anyone was there and saw her, they could save her, and she herself would hear what he was saying. And he kept promising her he would stand by her side and wouldn't leave the matter, blamed on her until, thank God, they found her location and saved her at the last moment. At that time, the hospital director wanted to bring the roof down on his head because in the end, he did what he wanted anyway and ruined all her plans. But she tried to save herself and did an interview with a journalist saying she was the one who asked him to do that, to take the credit for herself and have them praise her. But naturally, she wouldn't let what happened pass easily, and they decided to form a disciplinary committee to see exactly how to punish him. And at that time, G was with her friend in the restaurant and found her adoptive mother calling her to ask for money. So naturally, she agreed immediately because she just wanted her to acknowledge her at all. So her friend got very annoyed by the way she dealt with it and that she let her exploit her that way. And a big fight broke out between them. And if Lee hadn't arrived at that moment, they would have cut ties with each other. Afterward, G realized she was ruining things and would lose the people closest to her because of her excessive anger, and decided to accept Dr. Wang's offer and went to him herself to start treatment with him. And by chance, she heard the nurses talking about the disciplinary committee issue. So she understood that Lee hadn't told her anything about the subject because he didn't want to worry her. But all that occupied her mind was that she wanted to know exactly what illness she had. And when she asked the doctor, he refused to tell her. So she wouldn't keep searching on the internet and getting wrong information or lose hope in treatment. So she went to meet Gong to get the information from her, and indeed kept luring her until she told her the name of the illness she had. And as soon as she knew, the search journey began. And not only that, she went to some 6 or 7 psychiatric clinics to know if there was really hope for her cure or not. But she started feeling small when she realized that everyone who distanced themselves from her did so because of what she did, and thought she didn't deserve to have a person like Lee in her life because he was a doctor and had no psychological problems with which he could harm those around him. Meanwhile, Lee understood that the issue had blown up in the hospital, and they had photos of him with G to prove he was involved with his patient. So he refused to attend the committee and let them then make whatever decision they would take. And the decision was to suspend him from work for a month. And as soon as our girl knew what happened, she ran to look for him because his mobile was off. And when she went to his place and found his car, she tried to calm herself down to realize that he needed time to be alone and that she shouldn't pressure him at a time like this. And at the end of the day, he sent her a message reassuring her that he was fine. So she was very happy and kept following up with him online, sending him a video of herself every day as she went to work. work, and afterward, he learned from Gong that she had told Ji the name of her illness. So he got very worried and went to her work to check on her. And at that time, he was impressed when he saw her talking to an employee who was provoking her, and she was trying as much as she could to control herself so as not to get angry at him. And as soon as she saw Lee, she was very happy and informed him she intended to go to the orphanage where she was raised, perhaps to find any information about her real mother, because all she was going through was due to the feeling of abandonment she felt when her mother took her to the orphanage. And as soon as she arrived, she learned from the girl present that her mother had left her a letter with the orphanage director, but the woman had passed away and nothing remained behind her except this letter. And at that time, she spent the whole day with the children, and the next day she found Lee coming specifically to her to read the letter with her because he knew she wouldn't be able to do it alone. And afterward, they spent the day playing, and jumping around, then read the letter together. And we learned then that her mother took her to that orphanage because she was unable to spend on her and loved her very much, to the point that after 2 years, she returned again to take her. But unfortunately, another family had adopted her. So Ji felt a very heavy burden lifted from her heart because she confirmed that her mother hadn't abandoned her or anything. And she went to pay a light visit to her adoptive mother to apologize to her for what she did to her and assured her this would be the last time she would see her. Meanwhile, the entire medical team was holding a group dinner for Dr. Lee, and also to see him because they hadn't met for a long time, and they let him know how dark the department was without him. And at that time, he noticed someone kept jumping out at Xian and threatening him because he wanted money from him. And we learned at that moment that this was the father of a boy who was being treated by him because he was taking stimulants, hoping they would make him study better. And once he advised him and told him that when he was a student, he also took them, and until now couldn't stop them. And as soon as the boy's father caught the drugs, the boy told him his doctor was the one who prescribed them because he was afraid of his reaction. So the man acted as if he believed it and kept blackmailing Xian to get money from him, because if the stimulant usage story became known, they might revoke his license completely. So Lee started piecing the story together, because for several years he had noticed his friend always had a medicine box with unclear contents. So he went to him to understand more from him. So if this talk was true, he could help him before the issue reached the hospital and he got suspended from work. Meanwhile, Ji had already started the journey of self-discovery and began learning more and taking courses in drama therapy dialogue. At that time, Xian went to meet his friend and told him the story from the very beginning, that his mother was very strict with him because she always wanted to see him top of the class until he was forced to resort to stimulants to help him. And when he grew up, he felt the matter had become a habit and he couldn't stop it. So he decided to change the type of treatment and take vitamins, but put them in the exact same box so he wouldn't feel any kind of change. So Lee was reassured, thank God, and thanked his lucky stars that his friend was perfectly fine. And afterward, he went to meet Ji because he felt she was distracted from him, excessive. Not to mention she refused to tell him exactly what she was studying to make it a surprise for him when she finished. The next day, he went to train with his department head because he wanted a quick word with him. And we learned then that the hospital had just made a new center specialized in psychiatry. And naturally, the director decided to put Wang in charge. But the man knew he didn't want to bear this responsibility and suggested to her that the best person for this place was Lee, because he works from his heart and is ready to do anything for the patient to be well. And indeed, the woman was convinced, even though she couldn't stand him much, but fine, whatever. So our son went to her himself and made her understand he agreed, but on the condition that he would be alone in the administration and no one would interfere in any decision he took. And as soon as the deputy heard this, he felt he lost everything and collapsed from the shock. At that time, Xian decided to also break his silence and take action in his life, inviting Gina to dinner finally. And it was a romantic dinner to inform her that the research he had been working on for years was finally accepted by a university, and he would have to travel for a year to finish this matter with them. But before traveling, he needed to know if she agreed or not, and confessed his feelings to her to explain the situation. So she hinted to him that she also liked him and asked him to travel and finish his research. And as soon as he returned, they would get together and serve the sherbet. And in that time, both of them would confirm their feelings. As for Ji, she was working all the time on herself and went to work. And as soon as she finished, she went to therapy sessions until she herself started feeling the change she was in. And coincidentally, while walking in her street, she saw a family sitting together feeding their daughter. So she got very annoyed and felt sorry for herself. And immediately the next day, she went to Gina to talk to her and understand exactly what this feeling was, because it was the first time she felt this way and was afraid she was going backward in treatment, not forward. But the doctor explained to her that she was actually improving more because the ego inside her started to calm down, and she started feeling the normal human emotions that everyone has. Afterward, Lee wanted to help the deputy in any way to recover from the shock he was in. So he went to him, putting headphones in his ears, and made him let out everything in his heart. And as soon as he finished, he ran out of the room and let the rest of the doctors enter to praise him a bit and say how influential he was, and that the hospital without him was bad. And indeed, the method yielded results, and he started to loosen up a bit from the state he was in. And at the end of the day, he went out with G and confessed everything to her, saying that at first he was distancing himself from her because he had a problem with the illness she had since he was traumatized by this subject before. But her presence with him helped him overcome the trauma he had and return to being well again and live life exactly as he wished. And he promised her he would spend the rest of his life with her. And they started preparing together for the new center's party, where they gathered all the treated patients to sing together. And up to here, my dear, the events of our series end. I hope you liked the summary. Please don't forget to like, share, subscribe, and activate the bell button so you receive everything new. Goodbye.